Welcome back to the World Coin, the home of rare, legendary, and high-value coins from around the world. Every coin has a hidden story, and some of these small pieces of metal are worth hundreds, thousands, even millions of dollars today. From rare Lincoln wheat pennies and Washington quarters to era coins and historic collectibles, we uncover the most valuable treasures collectors are searching for right now. If you enjoy discovering old coins with unbelievable market value, amazing mint errors, and coin history that can change everything, then this channel is made for you. Here you will see rare finds, auction records, valuable coin details, grading secrets, and shocking prices that most people never imagine. So before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the World Coin, turn on the notification bell, and join us on this exciting journey through the world of valuable coins, because the next rare coin in your pocket could be worth a fortune. I have 2 videos of Washington quarter dollar. So let's get started. The 1977 D Washington quarter is a fascinating United States coin struck at the Denver Mint and identified by the small D mint mark. It belongs to the copper-nickel-clad Washington quarter series that began in 1965 when regular circulating silver quarters were replaced by clad coins. The 1977 D issue had a large mintage of 256,524,978 pieces, so the ordinary coin is not considered rare. However, individual examples can become much more interesting when they display an unusual mint-made mark, a major die characteristic, a genuine error, or exceptional preservation. The coin described here is especially interesting because of the unusual mark, or DAG, on its surface, which could potentially be the feature that separates it from an ordinary circulated quarter. The obverse of the 1977 D Washington quarter features the famous portrait of George Washington facing left. The design was created by sculptor John Flanagan and became one of the most recognizable American coin designs. Above Washington appears Liberty, while In God We Trust is positioned beside the portrait, and the date 1977 appears below. In very fine condition, the coin shows clear evidence of circulation, with some softening of the highest points of Washington's hair and facial details. Even with this wear, the major design elements remain visible, allowing collectors to appreciate the historical character of the coin. The reverse features the American eagle with its wings extended, surrounded by United States of America, quarter dollar, and E pluribus unum. The eagle, arrows, olive branch, stars, and lettering provide numerous areas for examination. Collectors often use these details to evaluate strike quality, circulation wear, possible die characteristics, and unusual minting features. A coin with a strong original strike can preserve impressive details, while a heavily circulated example will show progressively softer feathers, lettering, and design elements. The D mint mark is a normal and important characteristic of the 1977 D issue. It identifies the Denver Mint as the place where the quarter was produced. The absence or presence of the mint mark should not be confused with an error. On this coin, the D is supposed to be there. The potential source of additional value is the unusual DAG or mark, not simply the D mint mark. This distinction is important because a common date can become valuable only when an individual specimen possesses a characteristic that collectors genuinely consider scarce and desirable. The coin has a copper-nickel-clad composition rather than silver. The standard specifications are approximately 24.30 mm in diameter and 5.67 grams in weight, with a reeded edge. PCGS identifies the metal as 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. This clad construction became standard for circulating Washington quarters beginning in 1965. Therefore, the 1977 D quarter is part of an important period in American monetary history when the United States moved away from silver circulating quarters. Very fine condition is important when describing this coin because it indicates genuine circulation wear. A very fine example is not a pristine mint state coin. Washington's hair and the eagle's highest details may be worn, and the fields can contain normal contact marks from years of handling. This means that the ordinary market value of a very fine 1977 D quarter is modest. Current market references show ordinary examples around face value or a small premium, while substantially higher prices are associated with exceptional grades or unusual specimens. The unusual DAG is therefore the most important feature to investigate. If the mark was created during the original minting process, it could potentially be a die crack, die break, cud, struck through error, or another mint-made characteristic. If the mark was created after the coin left the Denver Mint, it may simply be damage. The difference between these two possibilities can have a major effect on collector interest and value. A raised mark can sometimes indicate a die-related feature. During the striking process, enormous pressure forces the metal of the planchette into the recessed areas of the dies. If a die develops a crack, the resulting crack can transfer to the struck coin as a raised line. If the die suffers a larger failure, the coin may receive a raised area associated with a die break or cud. When such characteristics are dramatic and repeat on other coins from the same die, they can become interesting collectibles. A recessed mark can have a different explanation. Foreign material trapped between the die and planchette can prevent the design from transferring correctly. When that material disappears, the coin may be left with a depression or area of missing detail. Such a feature can be known as a struck-through error. Genuine struck-through errors can carry premiums because they provide physical evidence of an unusual event during production. The shape and location of the dag are extremely important. Collectors should determine whether it crosses Washington's portrait, the date, Liberty, In God We Trust, the eagle, lettering, stars, or the rim. The exact position can help specialists compare the feature with other 1977 D quarters. If the same unusual feature appears repeatedly in the same location on multiple coins, it could be evidence of a die characteristic rather than random damage. Post-mint damage must always be considered. A quarter can receive scratches, dents, gouges, abrasions, or machine marks long after leaving the mint. These marks can sometimes look dramatic under magnification. However, damage created after production generally does not have the same collector premium as a genuine mint error. This is why the dag should be described as a potential value feature until it has been properly identified. The $2 million figure should be treated as a hypothetical extraordinary valuation rather than the established market price of an ordinary 1977 D Washington quarter. PCGS describes the 1977 D as a common date, with coins below MS-66 generally considered common. PCGS records an auction record of $459.99 for an MS-67 example, showing that even a very high-grade certified specimen has a documented market far below $2 million. This does not mean that errors cannot be valuable. A major, authenticated mint error can make an otherwise common coin substantially more desirable. Error collectors look for dramatic characteristics such as major off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchettes, die breaks, cuds, struck through errors, wrong planchette strikes, and recognized doubled dies. The stronger and rarer the error, the greater the potential premium can become. However, a $2 million price would require extraordinary evidence. The date, D mint mark, and very fine grade alone cannot justify such a valuation. Even the unusual dag would need professional authentication and evidence of extreme rarity before any extraordinary price could be considered realistic. A responsible collector should separate a hypothetical headline value from documented market prices. The official government denomination of the coin is 25 cents. That is its face value. The collector market value is different and is determined by private buyers, dealers, auctions, rarity, condition, authentication, and demand. The United States government does not guarantee that a 1977 D quarter is worth hundreds, thousands, or millions of dollars simply because it contains an unusual mark. The current market evidence illustrates the difference between an ordinary coin and a premium example. Coin World lists relatively modest values for 1977 D examples across normal grades, while PCGS documents much stronger prices for exceptional certified pieces. PCGS's auction record of $459.99 was achieved by an MS-67 example, not a very fine circulated coin. Condition rarity can therefore be very important. PCGS estimates that millions of 1977 D quarters survive in all grades and millions survive at MS-65 or better, but the population becomes much smaller at the highest grades. PCGS notes that the issue becomes somewhat scarce at MS-66 and that only a few dozen confirmed examples are known at MS-67. This shows how preservation can transform the desirability of a common date. For the particular very fine coin being discussed, the dag may be more important than the grade. If it proves to be a genuine mint-made error, collectors may consider the error independently of the normal circulated value. If the mark is only post-mint damage, the coin would remain a normal circulated 1977 D Washington quarter with modest collector value. Collectors should examine the coin under strong magnification without damaging it. A good loupe or microscope can reveal whether the mark is raised or recessed and whether it interacts naturally with the surrounding metal. Different lighting angles can make the surface easier to understand. Clear photographs of the entire coin and close-up photographs of the dag can also be useful for professional examination. The coin should never be polished or cleaned. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and may remove evidence that helps identify the mark. If the dag is genuinely valuable, preserving the coin exactly as discovered is much safer than attempting to improve its appearance. The weight should also be checked with an accurate digital scale. A normal 1977 D Washington quarter should be approximately 5.67 grams. A substantial deviation could suggest a possible planchet or production issue, although weight alone cannot prove an error. Scale accuracy, normal production tolerances, wear, and environmental factors must all be considered. The edge should be inspected as well. The quarter has a reeded edge, and unusual flattening, missing reeds, or other abnormalities can sometimes provide additional clues. A genuine mint error can occasionally affect the edge, while post-mint damage can leave evidence of handling or alteration. The date 1977 should be examined carefully. Collectors can look for unusual doubling or other die characteristics around the digits. But apparent doubling should not automatically be called a doubled die. Machine doubling and other strike effects can create similar appearances. Proper attribution is important before describing a feature as rare. The reverse should receive the same attention. Examine the eagle's feathers, shield, arrows, olive branch, stars, lettering, and rim. If the dag crosses one of these elements, the surrounding metal may help determine how the feature was created. A mint-made feature normally interacts with the design and metal flow in a way consistent with striking. The history of the Washington quarter makes this coin especially interesting. Washington first appeared on the quarter in 1932, and the design continued into the modern clad era. The 1977 D coin therefore connects the history of the first president with the changing technology and economics of American coinage. The switch to clad coinage in 1965 was one of the most important changes in modern United States circulating coins. Rising silver costs made the traditional silver composition increasingly impractical for everyday coinage. The clad Washington quarter allowed the familiar denomination and design to continue while replacing silver with a copper-nickel outer layer and copper core. The 1977 D quarter is consequently a physical record of this transition. It is not a silver quarter, but it represents the modern era of American coin production. Collectors interested in monetary history often include examples from different decades to document how United States coinage changed over time. The Denver Mint is another part of the coin's story. The D Mint mark identifies Denver production and allows collectors to separate this issue from Philadelphia and San Francisco examples. Collectors frequently build date and mint mark sets, making the 1977 D an important component of a complete Washington quarter collection. The unusual dag adds an element of mystery to the coin. It creates the possibility that this particular specimen could be different from the millions of ordinary quarters produced in 1977. But the correct approach is to investigate rather than assume. The mark must be identified before its effect on value can be determined. If the mark turns out to be a die crack, its value would depend on the size, location, and collector recognition of the feature. If it is a major die break or cud, the premium could potentially be stronger. If it is a dramatic struck-through error, collectors may also find it desirable. If it is a wrong planchet or major off-center error, professional authentication would be especially important. A coin with a rare mint error can sometimes be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars even when the normal date is common. But the market does not assign a fixed price to every error. Two coins with similar-looking marks can have very different values depending on authentication, rarity, appearance, and demand. This is why the phrase, "big market value," must be connected to evidence. A coin does not become valuable merely because it is old, because it has a D mint mark, or because it has a visible spot or mark. The market rewards genuine rarity and desirable characteristics that can be proven. The $2 million figure can therefore be presented as an extraordinary possibility in a YouTube discussion, but it should not be presented as the confirmed value of every 1977 D quarter. The documented market evidence is much lower for normal examples. A multi-million-dollar valuation would require a truly extraordinary discovery with professional authentication and strong market evidence. For collectors, the most exciting possibility is that the DAG represents something created inside the mint. If professional examination confirms that the feature was created during striking, the coin could become much more interesting than an ordinary circulated example. That is the real reason to investigate the mark. The coin should be preserved in a non-damaging holder and kept away from harsh chemicals, moisture, and abrasive materials. The original surfaces are important evidence. If professional grading is eventually pursued, an unaltered coin provides the best opportunity for accurate evaluation. The difference between a normal quarter and a valuable error can be surprisingly small visually. Experienced specialists know that tiny details in the shape, depth, metal flow, and position of a mark can reveal how it was created. This is why magnification and expert attribution are so important. The 1977 D Washington quarter also demonstrates why condition and error status should not be confused. A very fine coin has circulation wear. A mint state coin has no circulation wear. An error can exist at either grade. A circulated error may still be valuable because the error itself is rare, while a normal coin may need extraordinary mint state preservation to command a strong premium. For this reason, the unusual DAG should be evaluated separately from the very fine grade. First determine what the mark is. Then determine whether it is recognized and authentic. Finally, establish its market value using comparable authenticated examples. Next up, the 1985 P Washington quarter is an interesting United States coin that can become especially fascinating when an unusual mark, die feature, or possible mint error appears on the surface. This quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint and carries the P Mint mark, making it part of the modern Washington quarter series produced during the copper-nickel-clad era. The 1985 P issue had a very large mintage of 775,818,962 coins, meaning ordinary examples are common. However, the individual coin being examined here has an unusual DAG or mark that may give it additional collector interest. The important question is whether this mark was created during the original minting process or whether it happened later through circulation damage. If the mark can be proven to be a genuine mint-made characteristic, it could make this particular coin much more interesting than an ordinary 1985 P quarter. The obverse displays the familiar portrait of George Washington facing left. The design was created by John Flanagan and includes Liberty above the portrait, In God We Trust beside Washington's face, and the date 1985 below. In very fine condition, the quarter has experienced circulation, so some of the highest points of Washington's portrait and hair show wear. Nevertheless, the main portrait, lettering, date, and surrounding design remain recognizable. This condition gives the coin an authentic circulated appearance and makes it possible to study how the surface mark interacts with the original design. The reverse of the 1985 P Washington quarter features the American eagle with its wings spread above a bundle of arrows and an olive branch. The inscriptions United States of America, quarter dollar, and E pluribus unum surround the central design. The eagle, stars, arrows, shield, olive branch, and lettering provide many areas where collectors can inspect the coin for unusual characteristics. If the DAG crosses one of these design elements, its relationship with the surrounding metal becomes extremely important in determining whether it could be a mint-made feature. The P Mint mark is one of the defining characteristics of this issue. It identifies Philadelphia as the mint where the quarter was produced. The P Mint mark itself is normal and does not automatically make the coin rare. What makes this particular specimen interesting is the unusual mark or DAG. Collectors should understand that the date and mint mark establish the identity of the coin, while a genuine error or rare die variety can potentially establish additional collector value. The 1985 P quarter was made from copper-nickel-clad metal. PCGS lists the composition as 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. The coin measures approximately 24.30 millimeters in diameter and weighs about 5.67 grams, with a reeded edge. These specifications are important because collectors can compare the physical characteristics of a questionable coin with normal examples. A significant difference in weight, thickness, edge appearance, or composition could provide another clue that something unusual happened during production. The unusual dag is the feature that deserves the greatest attention. A visible mark on a coin can have several possible causes. It could be a die crack, die break, cud, struck through error, planchette defect, or another characteristic created during manufacturing. On the other hand, it could simply be a scratch, gouge, dent, or abrasion that occurred after the coin entered circulation. These two possibilities can produce very different values. A genuine mint-made error can attract collectors, while ordinary post-mint damage generally does not create a major premium. If the dag is raised above the surrounding surface, collectors may want to investigate whether it could be connected to a die crack or die break. During striking, the planchette is placed between dies and struck under tremendous pressure. If a die has developed a crack, that crack can sometimes transfer to the coin as a raised line. A larger die failure can create a more substantial raised area known as a cud. These features are created during the minting process and can be collectible when they are genuine, dramatic, and scarce. If the dag is recessed rather than raised, another possibility is a struck through error. A piece of foreign material can sometimes become trapped between the die and planchette during striking. The material can prevent part of the design from transferring properly, leaving an unusual depression or missing detail after the material is removed. Genuine struck-through errors can be collectible, especially when the shape is dramatic and the production explanation is clear. The exact position of the dag is also extremely important. Collectors should record whether it appears near Washington's face, hair, neck, the date, Liberty, In God We Trust, the rim, the eagle, the shield, the arrows, the olive branch, or the lettering on the reverse. A feature that repeats in exactly the same location on other examples can potentially point toward a die characteristic. A random mark that appears only on one coin and does not follow the natural flow of the struck metal may be more likely to represent post-mint damage. Very fine condition also needs to be understood correctly. A very fine coin has circulated and therefore contains noticeable wear. It should not be confused with mint state. The market value of an ordinary 1985 p quarter in circulated condition is generally modest. The strongest prices for this date have been associated with exceptionally preserved mint state examples rather than ordinary circulated pieces. PCGS records an auction result of $1,528 for an MS67 1985 p Washington quarter, demonstrating how much condition can influence collector value. PCGS reports that the 1985 p Washington quarter had a mintage of more than 775 million coins. Despite this enormous production figure, the issue becomes considerably more difficult in very high mint state grades. PCGS notes that fewer than a couple hundred examples had been found in MS66 and that only a small number of MS67 examples were known. This is an important lesson in coin collecting. A coin can have a huge mintage and still become scarce in exceptional condition. The unusual dag could potentially make the coin more interesting than its normal grade would suggest. If professional examination proves that the mark is a genuine mint-made error, the coin could attract a premium above the ordinary value of a circulated 1985 p quarter. The size, location, clarity, and rarity of the feature would all influence that premium. A dramatic and easily identifiable error generally has greater collector appeal than a tiny or ambiguous mark. The claimed $2 million figure should be viewed as a hypothetical extraordinary market scenario, not as the established value of a normal 1985 p Washington quarter. There is no documented evidence that an ordinary very fine 1985 p quarter is worth $2 million. The documented auction record reported by PCGS is $1,528 for an MS67 example. Therefore, a multi-million-dollar valuation would require an exceptionally rare and authenticated feature far beyond the normal characteristics of this issue. The phrase, value of the American government, should also be understood correctly. The United States government assigns the quarter a face value of 25 cents. The government does not guarantee that an individual 1985 p quarter is worth hundreds, thousands, or millions of dollars to collectors. Any additional value comes from the private numismatic market, where buyers and sellers consider rarity, condition, errors, varieties, authentication, eye appeal, and demand. The dag is therefore the key feature to investigate rather than automatically assuming that it guarantees a huge price. A genuine mint error could make the coin significantly more desirable, while a normal scratch would not. The difference can sometimes be difficult for an inexperienced collector to recognize, which is why professional examination is valuable when an unusual feature appears. Collectors should carefully examine the mark under magnification. A strong loupe or microscope can reveal whether the feature is raised, recessed, distorted, or simply cut into the surface. Lighting the coin from different angles can also help show the shape and depth of the feature. Photographs should be taken before the coin is handled extensively so that the original appearance is documented. The coin should never be polished, scratched, or chemically cleaned in an attempt to make the dag more visible. Cleaning can permanently alter the original surface and may actually reduce collector value. More importantly, alteration can destroy evidence that specialists need when determining whether a feature was created at the mint. The weight of the quarter should also be checked with a precise digital scale. A normal coin is expected to be around 5.67 grams. A major deviation could indicate a possible planchette problem, although weight alone cannot establish an error because normal production tolerances, wear, dirt, and scale accuracy must all be considered. The edge should also be inspected for unusual characteristics because the reeded edge can sometimes provide additional information about how a coin was produced. The date 1985 should be examined carefully for unusual doubling or other die characteristics. Collectors should be cautious, however, because not every apparent doubled image is a valuable doubled die. Machine doubling, strike effects, and ordinary wear can sometimes create misleading appearances. Proper attribution is essential before assigning a premium. The reverse deserves equal attention. The eagle's feathers, shield, arrows, olive branch, stars, lettering, and rim should all be examined. If the dag crosses any of these areas, the interaction between the mark and the design can help specialists understand its origin. A mint-made feature often has a relationship with the coin's metal flow that is difficult to reproduce through ordinary post-mint damage. The historical importance of the 1985 P quarter also adds to its appeal. Washington had already been featured on the quarter for decades by this time, and the 1985 issue represents the continuing use of the modern clad composition. The coin is a small physical record of American monetary history during the 1980s. The transition from silver to clad coinage was one of the most important developments in modern U.S. coinage. Beginning in 1965, regular circulating Washington quarters were produced in clad copper-nickel composition rather than the traditional silver alloy. The 1985 P quarter belongs entirely to this modern clad period and therefore represents an important stage in the evolution of American circulating money. The Philadelphia Mint's P mark is another useful collecting feature. Collectors often organize Washington quarter collections by date and mint mark, searching for P, D, and S issues where applicable. The 1985 P therefore has a specific place in date and mint mark collections even though its normal production was enormous. The market demonstrates why collectors should separate ordinary value from exceptional value. A circulated 1985 P quarter generally does not command a dramatic premium simply because of its date. The extraordinary prices associated with the issue are concentrated in exceptional grades or unusual characteristics. PCGS's $1,528 auction record was achieved by a certified MS-67 example, not a very fine circulated specimen. Other market references similarly show that ordinary 1985 P quarters are relatively inexpensive, while the price increases substantially for higher-grade examples. USA Coin Book lists the issue as a clad quarter with a 775,818,962 mintage and indicates that significant premiums are associated with uncirculated condition. This makes the unusual dag particularly important. If the mark is merely damage, the coin remains a normal circulated 1985 P quarter. If it is a recognized mint-made error, however, the collector equation changes. The error would need to be identified, authenticated, and compared with sales of similar examples before a realistic value could be established. A genuine error can sometimes turn an otherwise common coin into a much more desirable collectible. Collectors search for off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchettes, die cracks, die breaks, cuds, struck through errors, wrong planchette strikes, and other unusual minting events. The most dramatic examples can command significant premiums. The market value of an error is never determined by appearance alone. Rarity matters, but so does demand. An unusual feature that collectors recognize and actively pursue can be worth considerably more than a visually strange feature that has no established attribution. Certification from a respected grading service can also make a major difference when buyers are considering an expensive coin. The $2 million figure should therefore be used only as a hypothetical headline value in a discussion about an extraordinary discovery. It should not be presented as the normal value of the 1985 p quarter. The documented evidence places ordinary examples and even exceptional certified examples much lower. A multi-million-dollar result would require an extraordinary rarity and strong market confirmation. The most responsible way to investigate the coin is to preserve it exactly as found. Photograph both sides, photograph the dag from several angles, weigh the coin, inspect the edge, and compare the feature with known examples. If the mark appears to be mint-made, an experienced error specialist or professional grading service can provide a much more reliable opinion. The coin's very fine condition does not eliminate the possibility of an interesting error. An error can occur on a coin that later circulates for decades. The coin may lose some value from wear, but the underlying error can remain collectible if it is rare enough. This is why collectors should never judge a coin only by its age. A 1985 quarter is not ancient, but an unusual mint-made feature can potentially make a modern coin much more interesting. The date, mint mark, condition, and error characteristics all have to be considered together. The 1985 p Washington quarter is especially useful for demonstrating this principle because of its enormous mintage. More than 775 million were struck, so the ordinary coin is common. Yet the highest grade examples are much scarcer, and unusual errors can create separate collecting opportunities. The dag on this particular coin is therefore the feature that deserves the most attention. If it is a genuine mint-created characteristic, it could explain why this specimen is more interesting than a standard 1985 p quarter. If it is simply circulation damage, it should not be treated as a rare error. The official denomination remains 25 cents, while the collector market value can be higher when rarity and demand are present. Documented examples show that exceptional condition can push a 1985 p quarter into the hundreds or above, while the normal circulated coin remains far more modest in value. The story of this coin is ultimately a story of careful observation. Millions of 1985 p quarters were produced, but every individual coin experienced its own journey after leaving the mint. Some were spent repeatedly, some were saved in collections, some were damaged, and a small number may contain unusual characteristics created during production. That is what makes coin collecting so exciting. A coin that looks ordinary at first glance can become much more interesting when examined carefully under magnification. The unusual dag may be nothing more than damage, or it may represent a genuine minting event. The only responsible way to know is through careful examination and authentication. The 1985 p Washington quarter remains an important modern American coin because it combines the historic Washington design with the copper-nickel clad technology of the 1980s. Its Philadelphia P mint mark identifies its origin, its 1985 date places it within a fascinating period of American coinage, and its very fine condition shows that it circulated in everyday commerce. If the unusual dag is confirmed as a genuine mint-made error, it could provide the coin with a meaningful premium over its ordinary value. The exact amount would depend on the type of error, its size and location, its rarity, its visual appeal, and what collectors are actually willing to pay. For anyone who discovers a 1985 p Washington quarter with an unusual mark, the best advice is simple: protect it, do not clean it, document the feature, and have it examined before making any claims about its value. The difference between a damaged coin and a valuable mint error can be significant, and professional authentication is the safest way to establish the truth. The $2 million figure may represent an extraordinary hypothetical scenario, but the real value of this coin comes from its documented characteristics. The normal 1985 p quarter is common, while exceptional condition and genuine mint errors can create much greater collector interest. The unusual dag is therefore the key mystery surrounding this specimen, and determining exactly how that mark was created is the most important step in understanding its potential value.